The African Union should continue with its support for the struggles of people elsewhere in the world that still suffer under the yoke of oppression. Today, we reaffirm our unwavering support and solidarity with the Palestinian people in their legitimate quest for an independent and sovereign state. We also reaffirm our unwavering support for the independent and sovereign state, as well as the right of the people of Western Sahara to self-determination. I'd like to say, with regards to the US-inspired plan for the Palestinians, that as I listened to it and as I read everything that's written about it, it brought to mind a horrible history that we as South Africa have gone through. That the apartheid regime once imposed a Bantustan system on the people of South Africa without consultation with them and with all the oppressive elements that plan had. As I listened to the Arab League and as I listened to our colleagues from Palestine, it sounds like this plan, one, has not been consulted with all the people that matter, especially the Palestinians, and it sounds like a Bantustan type of construct.
Meanwhile, Israel has imposed a ban on the export of Palestinian farm produce via Jordan. In an escalating trade war, this will make it impossible for farmers in the occupied West Bank to connect with markets around the world. The Palestinians have described the export ban as a dangerous action. Palestine said the Israeli move is part of a dispute that began in October when the authorities ordered a halt to the import of calves from ranches in Israel. They said at the time they wanted to decrease their dependency on the Israeli market, but Israel saw the move as a breach of a trade agreement. Matshidiso Motsoeneng is a researcher at the Afro-Middle East Centre, a think tank based in Johannesburg. She joins us via Skype for more on this. Matshidiso, good evening and thank you for joining us on The Globe.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Matshidiso, we've seen President Cyril Ramaphosa at the AU summit basically saying that the US Middle East peace plan is described as another form of apartheid, reminding him of the situation that South Africa went through with regards to the Bantustan and the violence that was seen over the years. Take us through the thought process and why President Ramaphosa says this.
I think first, Lulu, is that the biggest thing was that his statement is actually something much more stronger than the statement we saw from DECO a few days after the Trump Middle East plan was unveiled. And it's very commendable, really, that he has come out so strongly as he ascends to being the chairperson of the African Union. I think what's very important about his statement is that it reflects really the analysis that has been made from this plan as Trump announces, but also before, as the so-called consultations with Israel was taking place. We knew Israel would never agree to a full Palestinian state with its own sovereign borders, control over its resources and air, and also a capital in East Jerusalem. So essentially what he is saying is a true reflection of what the Trump Middle East plan actually represents.
Now, in terms of that representation, we've also seen, responses or reaction from independent UN rights activists stating that this peace deal or peace proposal or plan is lopsided, and it's more lopsided to benefit the Israelis than the Palestinians.
It's actually totally beneficial to Israelis. And the so-called Palestinian state that they want to create will literally be patches of land, similarly to the Bantustan system that we had. But in this case, it will be connected by a series of railways and highways underground, tunnel roads, etc., etc. But again, there's no Palestinian that has agreed to this, that was in consultation or even in the process of drafting this very own so-called Trump's, deal of the century. As Ramaphosa has said, similarly to our situation, South Africans never agreed to have, Bantustans, etc., etc. And the system functioned solely for the benefit of the apartheid system, which is certainly the case with this plan. I mean, we know that the Palestinian Authority has been really functioning as a sort of a Bantustan for quite some time, and Trump's plan really is trying to solidify that, but also at the same time annexing much of Palestinian territories that are already occupied and controlled militarily by Israeli defense forces, essentially putting pen to paper this Bantustan plan and the suppression of Palestinian human rights.
Now, this is a long-standing conflict. This conflict has gone on for decades. Why are we not seeing any resolutions being brought forward? And now this particular plan by U.S. President Donald Trump seems to be making things worse. Why have we not seen, solutions over decades coming forward or coming through for the people of Palestine and the Israelis to live side by side without any conflict?
I think the issue in this case is that over time, and the longer the issue has gone on without a resolution, we've seen an emboldened Israel, of course, with the support of very powerful countries internationally, countries like the US, as you've mentioned, the United Kingdom. And really, we are unfortunately in global politics in a period of very right-wing global fascism, really, and the likes of, the current UK Prime Minister, as well as, Benjamin Netanyahu himself and Donald Trump. They're very right-wing politics, and they see really the existence of Israel, certainly as it is currently without a Palestinian state, very strategic to their own interests. And so they fund it. They support it internationally. We know that the US has even pulled out its funding to the Palestinian UN Refugee Agency because of the pressure that has come from Israel to silence Palestinians' right of return to their homes to which they were expelled from when the creation of the State of Israel took place in 1948. So really, this has gone on long as it has because Israel essentially has not only the economic resources to continue the oppression of the Palestinian, but also because they have the military might that has been enabled by this and by the support of these very powerful actors in the international community.
Now, Matshidiso, just moving further onto this, looking at what's happening now with regards to an escalation of a trade war that we're seeing reports of coming through between Israel and Palestine, with the Israelis now having imposed a ban on Palestinian farm produce via Jordan. This is very confusing. On the one hand, they basically want trade agreements to stand and to continue, but on the other hand, they seem to be continuing with the oppression of the Palestinians. Just looking at a statement from the Palestinians when they decided to pull back on, getting importing calves from Israel. Israel feels that they now are reneging on a trade agreement. What is it exactly that the Israeli government wants to see happening here?
So Israel wants the continuation of its, economy, which is really flourishing. It's very good if you're an Israeli, the economy functions really well. You get all sorts of social benefits. Of course, Palestinians do not get this. But this so-called flourishing Israeli economy has always been at the expense of Palestinians. So they import all their goods, all the products that have been manufactured on occupied legal lands, etc., into Palestinian occupied territories, essentially for the benefit of the Israeli economy. Again, you must also remember that the Palestinian Authority is just that. It's an authority. It's not a state. So many of these trade agreements were made under the 1990s Oslo agreements. And this was part of a sort of transition towards forming a Palestinian state. But that hasn't happened. So Israel likes the situation. They like a situation where they force and they impose their goods on Palestinians so that a Palestinian economy does not emerge. It does not flourish. They have closed down, markets that had been there for centuries in Hebron, for example, or East Jerusalem, all because it was contributing towards a Palestinian economy. Palestinians can't even, import or export things without the permission of Israelis. So really, this trade war is, again, a step further into Israelis sort of reminding Palestinians that, the so-called state that you so want will not happen, because this is nothing else but an exercise of power over Palestinians.
Now, Palestinians have described the export ban as a dangerous action. What do you think would they be able to do anything to retaliate or to ensure that their decisions are kept and they're able to continue with their decisions without being hampered?
I mean, they possibly could try. There's still a lot of Palestinian goods that the two countries still trade with, and Mohammed Shaitar, the Palestinian prime minister, has threatened this. He said they could possibly, increase their trade restrictions on some of the other livestock that Palestinians depend on. Things such as mineral water, medicinal herbs, etc., that they supply to Israel, they could also restrict and also burn the imports of some of the Israeli goods into the occupied territories. But at the same time, in terms of power dynamics, Palestinians do not really have that much to sort of play with in terms of coming to negotiating terms. But also Israel has looks at this so-called trade war from a very militarized security perspective. The decision to burn agricultural imports of Palestinian goods this time came straight from the office of the Defense Ministry. In fact, Minister Naftali Bennett himself is the one that gave out this instruction to stop the Palestinian goods from crossing into Jordan and reaching other global markets. But for Palestinians, it's solely a trade issue. It's solely an economic issue. Mohammed Shaitar, since taking up the prime ministry, has vowed to lessen Palestinian dependency on the Israeli economy. And this is really what it is for Palestinians. The whole thing has been, looked at from a trade perspective. Hence, the decisions have come from the agricultural ministries and the economy and the finance ministries, whereas on the Israeli side, it came from the defense ministry.
Matshidiso, we have run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll leave it there for now.